introduction. Hi, everybody. I am going to have fun today because I enjoy talking about this. This is probably my favorite topic to teach. Not my favorite topic, and maybe not necessarily the most important topic, but it's the favorite one to teach. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about RDI. And specifically, what I want to concentrate on are the 5 reasons, and this is all the gospel according to Gantner, by the way. This is not some sort of full-blown study on the subject or anything, but this is, in my experience, these are the things that cause RPG developers to say, hey, yeah, that's better than what I'm doing now. And of course, what they're doing now is usually PDM and SEU. What I thought I'd do is concentrate on those things, those 5 things. So to that end, I will talk about them. Now, it's not just 5 individual features. I kind of cheat just a little bit here because what I'm doing is I'm going to say that you can, I can put a lot of things into one reason, right? So it's categories more than anything else, shall we say. I am an unapologetic RDI fan. I even used RDI when I had to run Windows on my Mac, and that was forcing me to run Windows on my Mac is a pretty horrible thing to do. But not too long ago, I did that. I did that sacrifice just to run RDI. Fortunately, thank you to the developers who have now made it available to me natively on my Mac. Some of you who are running Windows will probably notice, perhaps you might notice, if you're already RDI users, you might notice a couple of things look a little different. The keyboard shortcuts, for example, are different and things like that. But if you do notice some of those differences, it may very well be because I'm running on a Mac. There are countless reasons why I use RDI. I could talk for hours on the subject and often do. But in this case, what I'm trying to do is cover the ones that I find are the most common reasons that people say, yeah, I'll move for that. So they fit into these 5 categories that I'm going to cover in just a moment. Now, if by some miracle, because I tend to get carried away when I talk about this and demonstrate this tool, if by some miracle we happen to have some time left at the end, I put a few bonus charts in to highlight a few of my favorite new features in RDI. So those of you that are already using RDI, some of the first stuff is probably, most of it's going to be, stuff you've seen before, hopefully stuff you already use. But towards the end, there's some newer features. Maybe you're using those too, but I just wanted to make sure that there's a few things that I think might possibly make their way into the top reasons. I might have to move from 5 to 6 or 7 at some point to make room for them. So with whatever time I've got left, I'll talk about a few of the newer features that might make their way into the top list at some point in the future. I did write a magazine article. Actually, John and I wrote a magazine article together for IBM Systems Magazine. And I've got a link in the handout to that article. So if you want to read a little more detail about these same 5 reasons, you might want to take a look at that. I've also got a lot of other references of stuff I've written later on. So these are the 5 reasons. As I said, they're not individual features. There are several features in underneath these categories. This is just the introduction, so don't ask 100 questions on this chart. We'll hold off and ask your 100 questions a little bit later. So what we're going to be talking about is the first reason that a lot of people want to move is because they can see more code. We tend to have, a lot of code that we're working with. Unfortunately, too much of that code quite often is in one source member or a very few number of source members rather than lots of small source members. But in either case, the idea is, that the more code you can see at a time, the more you're going to be more productive you're going to be. You can see more stuff. You can sort of take it all in a little bit better. And I'll talk about several different ways to do that. I'm not just talking about font size, I'm talking about other things as well. So hold on, we'll get to those details in a moment. The second reason, which is perhaps to me, perhaps an even more important reason, is how much information you have available to you at your fingertips. Places, things that you would have had to if you were using SEU as your editor, you would have to go somewhere else to get this information. It's all right available to you with either a keyboard shortcut or just already appearing right on the screen in front of you without you really having to do much of anything. So we'll talk about that as well. There's a lot of help with code navigation and understanding. So you open up a source member, maybe it's one you're not intimately familiar with, and so you have to kind of feel your way around and figure out what's going on. And so we'll talk about how you can sort of, RDI can help you sort of intelligently navigate both to and from parts of your code. So, you know, you're sitting on line 57 and you jump down to line 1157 and then you want to get right back up to 57 again. How do I do that? Yeah, so we'll talk about some of those kind of tools. Of course, probably the one thing that got me out of SEU in the very beginning was number 4. The speed in which I could find and fix compile errors. It's a simple thing. It's been there forever in RDI and its predecessor tools, but it's still right up there as a good reason to move. And the last one, I must confess, is one that a lot of people are beginning to move because of this. It wasn't so much the case maybe a couple of years ago. But these days, RPG is getting so many new features so rapidly. I mean, even things like freeform declarations, for example, and a whole lot of new built-ins and opcodes like data into and data gen and arrays, you know, more flexible arrays that you don't have to specify exactly how many elements and at compile time, and the you know, structures, more better ways of doing nested data structures, all that kind of stuff that we'll just not be able to do in SEU. Well, maybe I should say you can code it, but SEU doesn't really understand it and support it. And so anyway, that's the idea there. So what I'm going to do as I go through these 5 reasons is, as you can see here, I've got lots of pictures of screens. And so I don't promise that I'll have pictures of every single feature that I talk about, but most of them hopefully will be covered in the handout. But I put things in the handout that I thought would be good for you guys to, first of all, that gives me a chance to talk to first in a way that you might be able to see a little bit easier to the standard charts. But then I will do a lot of demonstration, at least networks permitting. And you know, the gods of demo, which is sometimes not very nice, but hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate a lot of these features as well. Reason number 1 is to be able to see more code. Now, the most obvious thing there is, of course, you can just, like you can see on this chart here, you can just see more code on the screen. How much code can you see on the screen? It all depends. It depends on the size and shape of your monitor, how good your eyesight is, that is to imply how small a font you can reasonably work with, you know, and those kind of things. So I should point out to you, as we go through the demo here, I have taken down the resolution of my monitor, my laptop here that I'm working with, so that you can more easily see when I'm demonstrating. I'm hoping you'll be able to see well enough. You don't have to read every line of code, but hopefully you can at least see what's going on. So I've done that, and so if it appears that I'm not, you know, I'm exaggerating a little bit about how much code I can see on the screen normally, it's because normally I'm not working in the kind of environment I have here. I actually have this picture on the right-hand side was actually taken at the same resolution you're going to be seeing in the demonstration. So, and even at that level, you can see that it's more than twice the lines of code that I can see in SEU. Okay, in SEU, I could take the function keys off the bottom if I want, maybe get, I don't know how many more lines, 3, 4, 5, maybe, I don't know, but it's still going to be pretty close to double. In a normal environment, when I'm working at a better resolution on my laptop screen, I can see quite a bit more. And of course, even more normal for me is that I'm working with an external monitor. in which case I can see closer to 3 times, actually more than 3 times typically, the number of lines of code that I could see in SEU. So just physically being able to see more lines of code and being able to determine, you know, how to, at what level of font works best for me to do that. So on top of that, as you can see, I've got little tabs up here at the top. And so that's because I can have multiple members open. And so that's, I can have as many members as I need to have open. This is all controlled by one job. We don't have multiple jobs going on that we're flipping back and forth between. So that's sort of the basics. On the green screen side, of course, you can make the screen as big as you like, and you're just going to get bigger letters. You don't really get more code. So the next thing is that a lot of people say, yes, but what about split screen? Of course, I can do split screen as well. I tend to split my screens vertically, as you see here. And I'll show you how to do this in just a moment. So in case some of you are wondering, oh, wait, I want to see that. How did you get there? I will show you in just a moment. But I just want to talk a little bit about the idea that I can split the screen either vertically or horizontally. It is your choice. For that matter, you can split the screen multiple times if you need to. If you have a big enough monitor and or small enough font to where that will support it feasibly, you can quite easily split your screen into 4 or even more areas on the screen if you want. By the way, all of these are editable, right? So none of them go into browse mode. Well, this one over here on the right-hand side happens to be, I just noticed the little icon there. That's actually a browse icon there. So this one isn't, and it says browse right there on the screen as well. This one in this particular picture isn't open for edit simply because I opened it for browse instead of edit, not because it's in split screen. Probably not a good choice for the chart now that I think about it, but anything can be split, whether it's open for edit or browse, and you can edit and browse. You can also edit side-by-side views of the same member. So for example, if I wanted to have some declarations on the left-hand side and my logic on the right-hand side, or my main logic on one side and my procedures or subroutines on the other side, you know, and all editable at the same time. So all of that is doable as well. And one last chart before I flip over and actually show you how to do this. Another way in which we can see more code on the screen is that we can see just code on the screen. And what I mean by that is, do any of you have, if you see sort of behind the scenes here on the left-hand side, I'm assuming probably some of you have some source members that have a few commented out lines of code in them. I know that in shops that I've been in, I would swear that there are some members who have more commented out lines of code than actual real live lines of code. But the idea here is that I can actually filter the screen so that I'm only seeing actual code, and I'm showing you how to do that here. I right click in the editor and just say filter view, show me just the code. So what you filter is what you want to see. Some people, when they first try this, say, oh, I want to filter the comments out. And so they tend to say filter comments, but that's what you want to remove. What you want to filter on is what you want to see. You can also filter on other things. I can see just my procedures or subroutines, or if this were an SQL member, which it isn't, I could see just my SQL statements. I could see just code that's changed recently, or some of those kind of things. But filtering my comments fits into the I can see more code on the screen, because I get rid of all the stuff that isn't code. So now let's just flip over here to
sorry, Susan.
RDI.
Susan, just before you go to the live one, sorry, there's one question for you and one comment that I think is worth sharing. Sorry, first of all, the question: would a 4K monitor be a help or a hindrance with the Windows machine / Windows RDI?
I have no idea. I've never had a 4K monitor. I don't even know what that would mean. I'm sorry. I mean, a bigger monitor, bigger the monitor is the better, because again, we're talking more code. What could be better than seeing more code? But I don't know, Paul, you may have an answer to that.
No, I mean, I think it all just depends on the font size that you can set and whether or not you can read the font.
Right.
Yeah. So the other one, there was a comment in from Dan DeVoe, and I've seen a few people do this, not one of my own ones, but I think it's worth sharing. He's saying when he's at work, he has a second monitor, which he has rotated smartphone-wise. So
Yes.
it's actually up on its side, so you get even more
Yeah,
lines of code.
exactly. Yeah, I have seen a lot of RPGers that do that. And if you have, especially if you have a lot of large source members, yeah, just turn that monitor vertically, and now you can see. I don't even know how many lines of code you can get there, but a lot
Yeah.
of lines of code.
Okay. And
Okay, yeah,
there was one other question in there, Susan, which I had answered. It says, can you copy a line of code or more from one side to the other when you're looking at the split screen?
yeah, absolutely you can. However, you can't do it the SEU way. You can't do the CC on one side and an A or B on the other side. You do have to use copy paste, and there's a couple of different versions of that. So I'll try to remember when I get into split screen in a moment to demonstrate that if you like. So here I am in RDI. I'm sure most of you have seen this before, whether you use RDI or not. You're probably thinking right away, if you haven't ever seen it before, what, she's lying. She's not getting that number of lines of code. That's because I'm not in full screen edit. So if I just double click at the top, I go to full screen, and that's where I get the rest of the lines of code in there. And these are other source members that I have open, so I just click on any of those. Obviously, most everything that I can do with a click, I can also do with various versions of keyboard shortcuts. I'm big on keyboard shortcuts, as you'll find as we go through this. I'll be talking about quite a lot of those. Basically, I can see more code here by just going to full screen. Let's see, what else can we do? Let's go ahead and just go into split screen mode as well. So let's say I want to take this payroll program over here, Shutter, old fixed form stuff. Well, I'll show you in a moment why I've got the old fixed form code here. It isn't just because I like it by any means. All I have to do is sort of grab the tab and drag it over, and when I see the little split line appear in the middle, then I drop it. So literally just grab the tab, drag it, and drop it whenever you see the split line where you want it. If I wanted to split the screen again, I could do, whoops, here we go, like that. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's now a horizontal line going across there. So I drop it there, and now I can split the screen again. Put them back together again, put Humpty Dumpty back together again by reversing the process. I just drag the tab and drop it right on top of that top line there where the rest of the tabs are. So I can do all of this stuff. Now, of course, now this fixed form freeform thing is not going to be very nice to show the copy paste, but hey, might as well. So what I can do, my favorite way to do copy paste is let's say I want to take this whole block over here, and I probably ought to be in the declarations here somewhere. And so I come over here, and I can do Control C and Alt C and copy that over on the other side. Right, so you see what I got it there. So the other way, you can just do the Control C, Control V thing. I prefer to do the other method just because it feels a little bit more streamlined, I guess. So what I do is I just highlighted the block, and I did a whole block of lines by doing Alt L to get the entire line. And if it's a block of lines, then you can do the second Alt L at the bottom, and then just move wherever you want it to go, and then you do your Alt C for copying, and that's how that works. And of course, one of my other very favorite features of RDI, which didn't even make my list, is the undo capability. So now that I've made just such a mess of that source member right there, I'm going to undo that and take it away. So I'm just going to unsplit my screen like so, and get rid of that thing on the top. Let's look at some better code. Let's see what else we can do. Actually, I should have, let me go back to that old one, because I know that there's just look at this, especially at the beginning, there's just a boatload of comments. Now, these are not commented out lines of code. These are just actual comments, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're commented out lines of code or real live comments, so to speak. You can always filter them out. So I can do filter view, code. And now all those comments have disappeared. They're not gone. I mean, they're in there. I can actually peek at them if I want. But I can get rid of them from my view, and now I can see just a lot more code. So if you work in one of those shops that does a lot of this commenting out of code, you know, that's code that's been there for decades, probably commented out, you can remove all that stuff from your view, get it out of the way so that you can actually see a lot more code. I can bring it back, by the way. Yep.
Sorry, Susan, just interject. Sorry, I think there was a little bit of confusion there. Maybe if you just want to go back and clarify on the use of Alt as opposed to Control C, Control V, that you were using Alt.
Yeah, I could use Control C, Control V, but the difference is that if I use the Alt, I don't have to actually do the Control C part. In other words, instead of Control V, I just move over there and insert the stuff.
So it's the thing, you just highlight a block of code, don't do a copy of it, just go where you want it, and do Alt V,
and then just,
and that that's effectively does the Control C, Control V for you.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what I, in my mind, I think of it as the Alt L part to highlight the code. So the Alt L is like the equivalent of doing the CCs, and then on the top and bottom, and then I move over wherever I want to go. Instead of saying A or B, I say Alt C, right, and copy the code over.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on then. So I think I've pretty much done the more code on the screen reason. So let me go back to my charts for a moment and talk about reason number 2, because this is also a big one. Reason number 2 says I have more information available at my fingertips. What do I mean by that? Well, some things are shown on this chart, maybe a little easier than in the demo. So I've got my outline. I have my outline, which has all my definitions. You can't see it on this screen. I'll show it to you in the live one because it's up further and we're not seeing at the very top. But I can see all my files. I can see all my structures, my data structures. I can see all the field definitions, whether they're internal or external. And of course, what their actual definitions are. Down here, what I'm looking at where those little circles are, that's showing me a cross-reference of every place that particular field is used. So I click on one of those and it'll position me to that line of code. Also, you don't even have to look over here for a lot of this information. I used to use outline a lot more than I do now because that's where I would go to find things like, was that a packed field or a zone field, or what exactly is that thing? I would look over in the outline. I don't need to do that anymore because these days, all I have to do is hover over a variable name and its definition will pop up here. Not just its definition, the fact that it's character 7, but the fact that it is included as part of a data structure. And if there are comments associated with that particular item, the comments will show up there as well. So let me, and that's just part of it, but the rest of it it's probably easier if I demonstrate. So let's just find some stuff that we can, this is similar code to what I was just looking at. So for example, I can come over here and I can say, well, I've got item, and item is, I'm just hover over it. I didn't do anything to make that appear other than move my mouse. So it's character 7, it's contained inside a data structure. I can see the comments. I have another one here. This one comes from an external file. Matter of fact, it comes from 4 different external files, as it turns out. A uniquely RPG thing. I can see another one that's part of a data structure. I can see a named constant here, and I can see the value of the constant if I want to see if that's important to me. So I can see all of these kind of things. It also works for things like subroutines and structures. So here is, and procedures, I should say. So here's a procedure. So it's showing me the procedure and its parameters and what it returns. And if it has any comments associated with it, I see that there too. So that's a huge thing that happened fairly recently in the 9.6 timeframe. Couple of other things that you might want to note. I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to go back into the regular view for a moment because I just want to show you that I can see, so that I can see both the outline as well, and also down below. You'll see why in a moment. Now, as I scroll through this code here, or if I move through the code, Look what's happening right down here below the code. This is relatively new. This is in 9607, I think. So some of you aren't, who have RDI, but maybe don't have it quite up to date. This may be news to you. So it's showing me where I am. So in this case, it's in either a subroutine or a subprocedure. It's also showing me over here by moving in the outline. So when I move to work into a different subroutine, then it shows up over here where I am. Now, both of those are optional. You can turn them off if you want. I really like the one at the bottom. I tend personally not to use the one in the outline, but I wanted to demonstrate that you have both those options. So that's called, I refer to that as the where am I feature, which is information that is good to know. Oh, a few other things. So I said that I would show you the files. So in my outline, I can see my files and I can take a look at the entire record format and all the fields in it. However, another thing that I can do is I can go to that file here and hang on and say show fields right on the declaration of the file. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up my fields table down here at the bottom. And it's showing me all the information about all the fields in that file. So multiple ways to get more information about what's going on with external files and things. So no more display FFDs or any of that kind of stuff needed. So I think that kind of covers, and going through my list, I want to make sure I covered everything. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers.
Okay, you got a few questions in here.
Okay.
Waiting for you. Francie wants to know which version of RDI you're using.
I'm using 9608 right now.
Okay, and is that the most recent one?
Yes, I hope so. I'm pretty sure. Unless they snuck one in on me when I wasn't looking.
Okay.
Yeah, 9608. I actually just recently went to 9608. So I confess that if you ask a lot of 9608 questions, I may not have all the answers because I've only been there a little while.
Yeah, I think though in terms of what you're covering today, Susan, I mean, this covers the last few releases of RDI. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we're talking about was there from the beginning, but there's not anything other than that little where am I thing. That was 9607. I think that's probably, of these top 5 reasons anyway, I think that's like the probably the only thing that requires a relatively recent release.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not quite, I missed this, but it says, what is the blanks space under that for? Not quite sure what that one was. You might clarify for me, Larry, and I'll ask later. Somebody else, well, can you integrate RDI and all the code to Microsoft TFS so that you can have a way to control the versioning of the code?
No idea. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar at all with the Microsoft tooling, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know of any way to do that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, not sure. I mean, there are ways of doing it with Git for versioning and a couple of the others. Not sure about Microsoft TFS.
Oh, I see. You're talking about versioning of the code. I was thinking, oh, okay,
yeah.
Sorry,
Larry clarified with the blue down arrow at the right. Are we getting closer?
Hang on.
Okay.
Blue down arrow at
it's the command area, guys.
Are we talking about this thing down here? Maybe. Yeah, there's messages that appear down here, and there's certain editor commands you can put in there. I hardly ever use it for that, to be honest, but maybe that's what he's talking about.
Okay, so
I could probably get rid of it if I tried, but it never bothered me.
So Ted Holt would like to know that it just says updating IBM software like RDI ACS can be difficult. What's the best way to update to the latest version of RDI?
This is really not a good question for me right at the moment. I had a few difficulties. I had a few difficulties upgrading to 9608. However, I think most of my difficulties were related to the fact that I'm on Mac. I mean, the Mac environment is very different. So if you're on Windows, I believe the best way is still the way that used to work fine for me on Mac and is having a little difficulty right now. You can go through, check for updates here. But the other thing that you can, oh, sorry, RDI updates, not the other updates. These updates are talking about other software. This is the actual Rational Developer for I updates. But that's just basically going to tell you, is there one out there? Is there a new one out there? The best thing is typically just to go to IBM Installation Manager, start that up. It will usually, once it starts up, says, hey, there's a new version of me. Would you like to reinstall me? You say yes, and then from there, go through that step, and then you go through and just say, okay, now I see that you have version whatever installed. Here's what's available. Here's the latest version available. Do you want to upgrade? So that sort of kind of worked, and it did work for me. It has worked for me in the past that way. And like I said, I believe this latest little wrinkle is a Mac scenario. So those of you who are on Macs, sorry. You might want to email me and I'll let you know when I get it finally resolved. Obviously I did get it installed, but there are some issues still that we're trying to work through. That's it.
Okay, well, Doug would also know, I mean, as you're talking, there are questions flowing in.
Oh dear.
It says, how did you get the field list at the bottom of the screen?
The field list at the bottom
This'll
of the
teach
screen.
you, Susan, for leaving stuff up
really.
that you don't want to talk about.
Really? Yeah, the field list is at the bottom of the screen. The way I got this one, there's multiple ways I could have got it there, but the way I did this one is I actually just position on the declaration of the file, right click, and I've got to show fields. Right there. So I could do the subfile one, for example. Oh no, it's not going to work for that. It only works for data files. Sorry. Of course, this one's going to look just the same because it's just a logical, the same thing. There we go.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Where was I? Go back to my charts here. Okay, so information at the fingertips. Believe I covered all of that. Then there's code navigation and understanding. Some of these things kind of overlap. I had trouble figuring out, what features do I put in which categories, because some of them do overlap a little bit, especially these two, information and code navigation. The outline itself that I already showed you can be used for navigation. So I could click on the name of a subroutine and it would position me there. I could click on the name of a field and it would position me to its definition and things like that. So that's one way. But in terms of understanding the code, and again, I've got my fixed format code here, because a lot of people think that, oh, well, most of my code is the old fixed format stuff. I don't need to use a brand new editor for that. We're not going to do freeform anytime soon. Yeah, maybe you do, because there's a lot of navigation and understanding kind of things that tools built in to help. So what we're looking at right here is called show block nesting. So basically, as you can probably guess, what's happening here is it's taking this lovely bit of logic. I love this part. End, 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 else, go to end. That's the code I'm working with here. I can position, in this case, I was probably positioned on either the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter. And I can right click and say that I want to show block nesting, or I can use a keyboard shortcut. And it draws all these little lines. Where the little break is, that's where the else is. So you can see, for example, this else is related to that first line, the outermost block, and then anything nested inside of it. It also works from an else up down, right? So I don't have to start at the top or bottom. I can start somewhere else. So that's one of the options. Now, some of you may be thinking, yeah, but we have mostly freeform code, so what about that? And I'll cover that in the demo. I don't actually have it showed covered here. The other thing, and this is probably my favorite thing to tell people about, because I find that it is, to me, perhaps the most underutilized feature. At least I use it all the time. And I find that a lot of people don't use it. So it's the ability to navigate to and from places within my code quite nicely. There are multiple ways of doing it, but this particular feature is one that I use quite extensively. So the idea here is that you can't see it on the screen right now, but somewhere along the line there must have been an execute subroutine. for this guy. And what I did was I positioned on the name of the subroutine on that line, and I pressed F3. Now I know F3 is a scary thing. Sounds like it's going to close the source member. Right? Don't know why it's F3, but it is. So you do F3, it positions you down to the subroutine. And that's good enough in and of itself, right? It got you to the subroutine really quickly without you having to search for stuff or even go to the outline view. But it gets even better than that because it will also take you right back where you were, back to that execute subroutine. That is the part that is, to me, the most powerful of this whole thing. And it's not just for subroutines or procedures, it's also for internal data definitions and things like that. So let's, why don't I just show you? It's probably much nicer to show you that. So as I said, I could navigate through my code. I'm having a little trouble with in case you're wondering why I'm maybe taking things a little bit slower than need be. It's because I've got things from Zoom appearing on top of my RDI screen that I'm having to kind of move around from time to time. So anyway, so I can just go directly to subroutines this way, right? I mean, this works just fine. And of course, I also have the where used, and I could go back from there. But here's the even better way of doing it. Where is it? Here we go. So if I go here and here's the subroutine. So if I want to look at that subroutine, because I'm going through the code, next thing I want to do when I hit execute subroutine is typically read the subroutine. So I'd hit F3, that got me down here. Now I'm going to call your attention to it now because it's about to disappear. A little message that says press Alt and left or right arrow to switch back and forth between the previous and current location. I'm not going to do that yet because I'm going to show you how I actually use this. So I got to the subroutine. Now what I want to do is look at the subroutine, blah, 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 blah. Oh, look, now I'm at the end of the subroutine. What do I need to do now? Next thing I want to do is go right back where I was. If you're anything like me, you might not have had the forethought to remember exactly where you were at the time. Fortunately, I don't need to worry about that because I can just do Alt left arrow and it takes me right back to that execute subroutine, right where I was. Also works for procedures, of course, same kind of thing. Go down here, and obviously you don't really have to read through the entire procedure to go back. I can go back at any time. It takes me right back where I was. Also, look at definitions. So let's say, for example, I hover over this and I can see that this thing is packed and its size, and I can see that it's in a data structure. I can even see its comments. So I probably don't need to go look at the definition of this thing very often. But what if I want to change it? You know, what if I need to make it bigger, or, you know, look at the other stuff in the data structure or something like that? Option one is that you notice there's those little blue links there. I could use those, but they will not bring me back here. So I choose not to do that. What I prefer to do instead is I do F3. It takes me to that definition. I do whatever work I need to do once I'm there, and I do my Alt left arrow and head right back where I was. So to me, that has saved me so many hours over even a week, I would say. So I highly recommend, if you're not using that, if you're RDI user not using that, you might want to put that in your wheelhouse. What else can we do here? Oh, another thing is that perhaps what I want to do is, maybe what I want to do here is I want to take a look at this variable name here. And I'm not sure if that's a really good one because I don't think it's used very many places. Let me try this one here. I think it's used more places, and I can highlight them. So there's a little highlighter up here. Trust me, that's a highlighter. Somebody had to tell me that because I didn't know what it was. So I've got my little highlighter here. And now notice that it's highlighted everywhere in the code that it exists. Now, if this is a really long source member, just scrolling through to find them could be a bit tedious. So I've also got these little arrows here that will take me from one place to the next, right? So I can just go through all of these. I'm just clicking on this little arrow up in the toolbar. There's also a keyboard shortcut, which, you know, given that I normally use keyboard shortcuts a lot, I have blanked out on what the keyboard shortcut is on this, but so I would I'd have to look that up. So I have that option. And oh, by the way, there's one more thing. Suppose if I'm really that interested in this particular field, and I just want to see all the places that it's used. I also have the option of saying selected. So I selected it with my mouse first. Let me go back there so you can see I selected it with my mouse. I right click and then I say the selected item, filter on that. And remember what filter did for us before? It shows me only the lines of code that contain that. So in this case, now, if the letters CTR appear in a comment somewhere or something, that would appear. It's not intelligent enough to say that this is an actual field, but it is, you know, showing me a lot of places where this thing is used. And then if I position in one of those, let's just say I want to go back here to the definition and then do my Control W or show all, which I can, if show all for those of you who are not into shortcuts, I can do like this. And it will position you right on that line of code where you are. So that helps you navigate through and understand what's going on and where things are being used and things like that. Let's see, what else should we talk about? Oh, I showed you the show block nesting in the actual chart. It's probably not all that significant. Let me find that code. There it is. Lovely stuff, this thing. So if I come here and I go to source and do show block nesting, or I can use this keyboard shortcut, which is Control-Shift-O. So I can do that, and I also can go from, say, an else, for example, and say, now show me where's the beginning and end of this particular block, and it always shows you what's nested inside there as well. So, and you can also do it throughout for an entire procedure, for example, if you got a big procedure or subroutine, you can have it do the entire procedure or subroutine. So that works quite nicely, and I can do my Control F5 to clear it out. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here to make sure I don't, oh, and I said that I would talk about, okay, so that's how we find out how nesting works in fixed form. How do we find out about nesting or you know, worry about nested logic in free form? Well, hopefully in your free form stuff, it is already kind of nested naturally in the way that the code is written. But A, it might not be. You know, maybe you've got somebody who's just not into writing readable code, or you know, lots of other reasons why, or maybe you don't trust it. Maybe it doesn't look like it's correct or something like that. So it's kind of nice to know that I also have the ability to, let's see, where was it? I'm in the wrong, sorry, I got two of these that are almost exactly the same, but not quite. So let me go back here, see my outline view, and I'm going to get to a subroutine that I put in here that's written by somebody who doesn't believe in formatting things. So I could format the whole thing, but I'm going to just format this subroutine itself. So I'm just doing my Alt-L to select the block, top and bottom. And then I can do the keyboard shortcut, or I could do source format. And it's formatted the code for me. Now you might say to yourself, oh, but I don't like to indent mine that way. I put more indenting or less indenting or whatever. It's all according to your preferences. So there are preferences in there that you can set up. I think I've got the default set up here to two spaces for each level. So it can help with that, help you sort out that kind of nested logic if necessary. And I believe that is all I wanted to show you guys about navigation and understanding. Probably lots of other things I could show you as there's things that come to mind. Moving on to reason number 4. This one's pretty short and sweet. Finding and fixing compilers.
Sorry, Susan. There were just a couple of quick questions for you in there. Christopher wants to know, what does the F2 do? I'm not sure if I missed where you were.
Oh, I think that was in. I think that is. Let me see. Yeah, the press F2 for focus. I think maybe it might be what he's talking about here. Okay, it doesn't really help so much on this one. Let me find a better case where I can explain why you might want it. Yeah, so here, you notice I've got these little links here. Well, now, of course, just for the purpose, it's staying there. Quite often, I have it hover, and then when I try to go and hit the link, it disappears on me, right? And so moving the mouse, get rid of it. So that's what F2 does. F2 basically says, hold it there. So it kind of holds that little yellow box there so that I can use that link. Now, I personally don't use that feature very much because, like I said, instead of using these links, I personally prefer to use the F3 thing. But you can do it either way.
Okay, so Trudy had a question. I was trying to answer. She said her show block wasn't working. It would just be grayed out. The option for show block would be grayed out, but select block does work.
Yeah, yeah. So there is select block, which will just sort of highlight the entire block of code, and that works just fine. That's one of those little. I have had occasions where show block nesting didn't work. And usually, I know it sounds weird, usually I can go to another block and do show block nesting somewhere else and then come back and the original one works again. So I think I should report that, you think? It's either that or it's my machine is possessed. I'm not sure.
Okay. So somebody is there a way to override the RDI default formatting for CLLE?
Well, there are some, yes, there are some preferences for CL formatting. Whether or not any of them do exactly what you'd like, I suppose, kind of depends. And I think you can turn it off altogether. I don't do a lot of CL coding personally, so I haven't worked with it enough to know, but certainly there are preferences for that.
Okay, and just one last quick one. How can you see source line dates on the right in RDI?
I don't see them on the right, but if I right click, I can put them on the left. If I can remember where. There, no, that's open new view. Hang on. Show date area. There it is. So under source, just right click source, and there's my dates.
Cool. Let's see. Okay. I think that's it. And just so you know, Susan, this is your 10.5-minute warning.
So much for all those bonus charts I wanted to go through. Anyway, okay, so find and fix compile errors. This is pretty basic stuff. Sure, anybody who's used RDI, well, actually, I shouldn't say that anybody who's used RDI has probably already done this, because sadly, I hear a lot of people say, yeah, I do all my editing in RDI and I don't compile that way. Shame on you. Look what you're missing out on. So I'm going to, I'll first of all just show you the slow way. I can use the compile menu options. And because I made that change to reformat that code, it's asking me, do I want to save that? And so if I say yes to that, it goes through, it does the compile, and it comes down here in my error list and says, I have no errors. Well, that's not terribly impressive. So let's create some errors, shall we? Let me just misspell a couple of things here. Well, that one's actually not referenced anywhere, so that's probably not good. So I'll just put a couple of errors in here, and now I'm going to do it the fast way now. I just use the keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-C, and press OK, and I should now have some errors appearing. This is why you want your error list to appear here. Not just because it appears here and you don't have to go looking for a spool file. That's good enough, in my opinion, but also it means that I can double click and I'm positioned right here. And so now I have to remember how to spell this thing. I can look over in my outline view and see what the name of that file was. So I get myself in insert mode here. So I think I just need a P there. And now it's put a little check mark there. It doesn't know if it's not recompiled it. It doesn't know if I've actually fixed the problem or not. But I think this one just needs, again, I could have used my outline to find what the names of those constants were over here. The other thing is those little arrows that I talked about can be used to navigate through the errors as well. So Anyway, I think I've fixed everything. Let me just do Control-Shift-C again. Sure. Sorry about that. I was keep hitting the wrong key. I was trying to figure out why it wasn't working. I wasn't hitting C properly. There we go. And now I'm back to all messages have been filtered out or removed. So clean compile. I defy anybody to correct even 2 small errors like that as quickly as I did using spool files. I actually change all my compile commands, customize all my compile commands so they don't produce compile listings at all anymore, because who needs them? So that's it for that one. It's not a lot to say. And the last reason is support for today's RPG. So as you can see on the back here on the left-hand side, this is what SEU looks like if I code freeform declarations or do any other relatively modern RPG feature because it's not supported in SEU and won't be. Now, before, I'm sure a lot of people are probably already keying this right now into the Q&A or the chat. Oh, wait, you could turn off syntax checking and it wouldn't look so ugly. Yes, I could. So now I remove one of the few features that I have available to me in SEU by turning off syntax checking. To me, that's not a really good workaround for that particular problem. Anyway, not just the fact, as I'm showing here, that of course all those declarations and things are not going to be flagged as errors in RDI. It's not just a toleration of them or acceptance of them, it's also helping you. So for example, I don't know about you guys, but I'm still struggling every now and then to think of what is the actual keyword I'm supposed to put in here for some of these new declarations, especially the files. I have trouble sometimes remembering what all those keywords are, even data types and things like that, like I'm depicting here. So not only will it actually work and actually show you this stuff, you can do control space. So what this is doing is I just did content assist, position, so you key something in. So I know that I'm going to declare a variable, I have to put the name in, I know that much. So I put the name in, then I do control space, pops up this little list, and now the next thing that has to be there is the data type. And so it's showing me a list of all the data types. And then if I hit control space again, after that, it's going to show me all the other keywords that are valid for this particular type of code that I'm doing. And it does the same thing for all those file declarations and things like that. Built-in functions, it'll show you lists of built-in functions, including all the parameters for them and things like that. So control space is a really good thing to know about. Also, if you just want to get more information about the keywords, I have trouble with keywords. You can just position in the keyword area of one of these opcodes and press F1, which will take you to the RPG reference manual. So I've talked about a lot of keyboard shortcuts, so I also included here, it's actually in here a couple of times, I think, to my favorite keyboard shortcuts handout that you can download for yourself. So we have that for supporting today's RPG. So just to kind of wrap up the 5 reasons that I think people, that I see that most people want to move from SEU to RDI, be able to see more code on the screen, multiple source members open at once, split screen with both sides editable, filtering out comments so that you're seeing only code when you're looking at it. The information at your fingertips with the hover text and the program outline, the where am I, the relatively new feature that appears at the bottom showing you where you are within the program, whether you're in a procedure or subroutine or main code. Navigating through your code and understanding code, helping you understand how things hang together, highlighting nested blocks of logic in fixed form RPG and automatically formatting nested blocks in free format RPG. And of course the compile error thing. Pretty straightforward, But please don't forget to double click on the error to position you in the editor. Nothing frustrates me more than to finally see somebody grasp that they can actually compile in RDI and should do that, and their error list pops up, and then they go into the editor and just start scrolling around looking to see where all that stuff is. Double click and it positions you right where you need to be, or at least where it reported the error. It may not be the place to fix it. Maybe you forgot to define something, but you know, at least it gets you close to where you're supposed to be. And of course, the fact that this is the only editor from IBM that supports today's RPG with all of its new features and functions and capabilities. And really, don't we all want to be using the latest stuff? Because that improves our productivity in other ways, using the most modern features of the language. Got quite a few resources here to talk about. I've got a variety of articles, some that I've specifically listed here. So I'm not going to go through these. I'm just showing you what's in your chart. Also, while on the subject still of articles, I've also got a link to our John and I write a lot of articles for different publications, and so we have sort of a collection of those on authory.com, and I have a specific one with my RDI stuff in, so you can check those out if you're interested in reading more about some of these things. So I know I'm just about at the end, so I won't be able to demonstrate any of these features, but let me just do a quick run through of what some of my other new, relatively new features are, my favorites among them. I'm sure there are a lot of you saying, what, those are your favorites? You know, you didn't list X, Y, and Z, because there are a ton of new things that are great. I've got two big things and three little things here. The two big things are the enhanced object table and the refactoring. The little things are in the middle. So the enhanced object table, let me just switch to the chart so you can see it. Object table we've had in RDI forever, but a lot of people didn't use it. You probably even closed it, perhaps. At least I found a lot of people have done that. So you might want to open it up again, because the object table has a lot of new features and have been added, and it keeps getting better and better with each release. So what I've got here is it's sort of a PDM-like list with a lot more stuff in it than we see in Remote System Explorer. We've also got an option here, which I can use to do things like put a 2 next to a source member to edit it, or a 5 to browse it, or you know, a 3 to copy it, or 4 to delete it, right? So you can do those kind of things. You can also use your own RDI user actions. You can sort things, and you can customize which columns appear, and you can also build your own filters over here that you can use to refill this or to use in Remote System Explorer. This is just illustrating that if I put, you know, if I want to copy 3 members, this is relatively new here. I want to copy 3 members, it pops up a little dialog just like PDM would. Much nicer than what we used to use within RDI to do copies of members and things like that. I know it sounds like a tiny little thing, but the fact that I can toggle edit browse, to me that's a nice thing, because now it means I just double click on something to open it. I don't have to worry about whether I really want it open for edit or browse. And then once it's open, if I want browse, I just go in and say Control-Shift-G, switches it over to browse. And I can easily see at the top with the icons which ones are browse and which ones are not. So that's kind of cool. And this is another thing, is a tiny little thing, but the number of times I use this, it still amazes me. This is a situation where either you're just having trouble focusing, or perhaps you're trying to show code to somebody else. You know, if you're like me, you call somebody in, hey, take a look at this. What's wrong with this? I've beaten my head against the wall. And they look over your shoulder and they say, hey, can you make that a little bigger? You know, so yes, I can, Control+, right? And keep hitting Control+ until it's big enough for them. And then when you want to get it back down to size again, Control- gets you there. Where am I? I actually already showed you this, but because it's a new feature, I included it here as well. So you've already seen that. I can skip that part. The last really big thing that was added was refactoring to extract procedures. We actually have 3 different kinds of refactoring. We can rename, like fields, for example, extract constants, actual constant values, and turn them into named constants, or we can extract procedures. So in this case, I've just taken a block of code. I said extract procedure. I fill in all the blanks for what do I want to name the procedure, any kind of special features I want. Does it return a value? If I want to pass parameters, I add a parameter. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. I don't have a picture of it, but in the options over here is where you can specify whether it's going to be an external procedure. If it is, then it will go ahead and put in the what is it? Whatever the extract word is that you have to put in, and keyword, and also puts in the prototype for you, because of course you need it for those. And you've got the wizard that will help you. This is the return value wizard. So you just tell it what it is you're going to return, what data type, and all of that. And this is the parameter wizard with my favorite option for constant, which I like to use as much as I can. Whoops. And what that does, not surprisingly, is in the appropriate spot in the source member, down below, usually, it will take and put in the declare proc, in proc, all of that, whether you want it generated, and you do have an option, by the way, for fixed form or free form. And then it also puts in where I was, where that code was, it put in a call to that procedure for me. So that's cool stuff. Cool stuff in the latest release. So it just keeps getting better and better. Over 20 of the top 25 voted RFEs, requests for enhancements, if you're not familiar with that term, have been addressed. So make your wishes known. Those of you who use RDI or when you're starting to use RDI, I would strongly suggest that you go and take a look at the request for enhancements. That's stuff down here at the bottom. Start with voting for enhancements somebody else has suggested, and maybe create your own as well. And if you want to know what the recent enhancements are, you can get those from up here. That's the link up here at the top with the fix list. I didn't cover anywhere near all the enhancements in 9.6. They go on and on and on. So
do you have time for a couple of very quick questions, Susan?
I do if you do.
Okay. When was the last time the shortcut list was updated?
You don't want to ask me that. Too long ago. I honestly don't recall. It's been over a year, I'm sure. And even worse, I still have yet to do my Mac version, my much promised Mac version of the shortcut list. So I am behind with my shortcuts, but I will get caught up.
Okay. Is there a way to have RDI open in browse by default?
Yes. Yes, it's a preference. I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head where it is, but if you want to email me if you can't find it, I'll dig that out for you. But there is a preference that you can set to say, yeah, always, if you double click, it becomes a browse open, not an edit. And remember, you can easily, if you do decide you want to edit it, you can use the shortcut that I talked about to get it over to edit mode.
Okay. This one, the program outline disappears in full edit mode. Is there a way to keep it pinned to the editor?
The only way I know to do that is to create yourself a special perspective to do that. It's a little bit beyond what I can talk about in these 2 or 3 minutes that I should probably take here. So if you want to email me on that, I will maybe put a little video together or something. There may be multiple people who want to know that. So anybody who wants to know the answer to that question,
Okay.
you can send me an email. It's on the handout, not in front of me right now, but it is on the handout, and I'll show you how to create your own special perspective to do that.
Okay.
Susan found yesterday a quick way of doing that because I needed it.
Yeah.
If you pop the outline view out from the side and then drag it, you can get it into a split screen position.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, some people do. You could take any of your views, but outline is probably the most useful one, where you can actually separate it from the workbench altogether. And then you can kind of float it wherever you need it to be. That's another option. Yeah, good point.
Okay. Can debug have a command line to look at qtemp files of the job?
I don't think so. I've had that question before. It's not something I've ever needed to do, so I don't believe I found a way to do that. But again, pop me an email, and I will see if I can come up with or maybe somebody out there in the audience knows the answer to that, and could address it now. I don't think so, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay, sorry, there was one question that says, how do you get the outline associated with the workbench again?
So I assume they mean they don't have an outline at all?
Yeah,
If that's the
I'm guessing
case,
that would be it, yeah.
because they probably at some point, accidentally or on purpose, hit that little X and made it go away like that.
Yeah.
The same way that I can get any view back that I may have lost at some point, like the object table I talked about earlier, is you do show view. Under the window, you do show view, and you notice that outline does not appear here. So I go to other, and I start to key the word outline, and by the time I get the third letter in, there's the outline, double click, and he's back.
Okay, and let's see, there was one else. So there was a comment more from Dexter. He said, I found you need to work the errors when you're looking at an error list from the bottom of the list first, because if you insert lines, it throws off the highlights of the following errors.
Okay, so I wonder if he's talking about using the old inserted ones as opposed to the annotations like I was doing before, because I haven't had that problem with annotations.
Yeah, I think this is with the, like when you're looking at the error list, I think it is at the bottom, that if you insert lines, the numbers stay the same. So if you double click on one of them, it brings you
I see what you
like
mean.
to line 52, which is now line 55.
Interesting. I don't know that I've ever run into that difficulty, but okay, good comment.
Well, that's because you never have bugs in your,
I don't have,
you never have those errors, Susan.
I have to manually introduce them like I just showed you, yeah.
Okay, so listen, Susan, we're after running over by nearly 10 minutes here, so I think we should let people go.
I think, yeah, well past lunchtime.
Okay, everyone, listen, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope that you're enjoying the sessions. Hopefully some of you will be checking in tomorrow. Tomorrow we have checking code quality and security automatically with ARCAD. And next week we have Build an IBM I web app in under 10 minutes. Sponsored by CNX, and an intro to Python for RPGers with Mike Pavlak, all of which I'm looking forward to. So everyone, thanks a lot. Susan, as always, great presentation. Thanks a million. I might actually start using this RDI someday. I'm kidding everyone. I'm using it all the time. Otherwise, Susan would kill me.
I would hit him. I would, yeah. If I could reach him. I would hit him. Right now,
okay.
Not so much.
Okay, everyone, that's it. Thank you. Bye to all.
Thanks, Paul.